Okay, so let's talk about the oscillators. So I am going to sort of start with, no filter happening here, and play the keyboard a little bit. Hopefully. It might be that I need to turn this up. There we go. Okay, and I've got some portamento turned on. Let me turn that off. Okay, so nice thing about this design is it's sort of like these oscillators really are just cycling things, right? So they can be in audio range or they can be in an LFO type of state. So let's start with oscillator 1. Turn up the volume. Right? Over here, we have some options. We can tune the oscillator, and what you'll find is that the 2600 stays in tune really, really well. So I can move pitches. Sort of the magic happens when you start combining these together. Right now I've got this in tune. So square wave is normal, but we can take a sawtooth out of here. Okay, nice sounding sawtooth. We can also take the square out. In this application you would send the square somewhere else. What I tend to do is send it to FM somewhere else. You'll notice each oscillator has all these FM controls. So let's listen to that a little bit. So we can take the ADSR as part of the FM. And we can, here's the ADSR, so we can, the real application of this would be for percussion. Okay, we can take VCO2. Let's put these back up. The tuning of VCO2 matters, and the state. So you'll notice each oscillator has a keyboard on or low frequency switch. If I take the oscillator 2 into low frequency, now you can see we're sending the sine wave into oscillator 1. Alright, and we also can send sample and hold here. So sample and hold is down here. We can affect the rate. And we'll look at some applications of that later. Similarly, VCO2 kind of works the same way. It's just got a lot more choices, and it's got a pulse width control here. So I tend to think about this second oscillator as my modulation oscillator, mostly because it has triangle, sawtooth, sine, and pulse outputs. It also has a pulse width modulation input, so you can kind of play around with that. Everything that comes out of this sounds good for whatever reason. Same thing with oscillator 3. We can have a sawtooth or a pulse, and we control the pulse width. So applications. This makes monster bass lines, especially once you get all three oscillators going, and they're like, they can either be very wide like this, tuning wise, or they can be closer. You could try to get that in tune, or even out of tune. So the fun part of this for me was, I can set this up. Alright, so here's my Arpeggiator running on a single note. I work mostly in film scoring, so I think about this sort of in terms of like how I would use this. This could basically be the Dunkirk soundtrack. They did that with strings, right? But there's an aleatoric part of that score, so where the violins are sort of randomly falling out of tune on purpose. And with this, we're building tension. notice we also get some like interesting rhythms as the different waveforms are interacting destructively. So I have kind of used this as like a substitute for strings. It does tend to work a little bit better if you use the sawtooth. That's sort of like your string. And we're going to turn up some reverb. So that's something to play around with, is the different wave shapes. The triangle is less heard and more felt. Same thing with the sine wave. Okay, so there's some oscillator basics. Hope that helps.